Mayor talking tough, taking a tough stance on the violence in Charlottesville.
Mayor Sylvester Turner says hate has no place here in Houston. He joins us live right now. Mayor Turner, thank you so much. We want to ask you, in the light of the tragic events in Charlottesville, what is your message now to Houstonians?
Well, number one, I mean, look, this is one country. There are 50 states within our country, and the city of Houston is one city. We are highly diverse, but we respect one another. We are a welcoming city. And quite frankly, we have to be protective of one another. All Houstonians matter. All Houstonians are important. I don't care what your language is. I don't care what your religion is. I don't care where you come from. If you're within the city of Houston, our obligation is to be respectful of each other and to be supportive and caring for one another. And that's clear.
And the mayor, how would you handle this kind of protest? We hear the police chief talk about this delicate balance, but how would the city handle something like that, say, downtown Houston?
Well, in the city of Houston, look, number one, people have a right to freedom of speech. I mean, we respect that and we tolerate that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is jammed or is in close proximity with one another. You try to keep the different groups apart from one another. You allow people to express themselves, but to do it in an orderly fashion. We put in the necessary blockade, so to speak, to keep them at a distance. I commend, for example, Seattle on how they handled their protests yesterday. They kept them far apart. The police was right there in between, didn't get them close enough so they could throw something at one another, didn't let them break through the lines. Everybody has a right to their opinions, but you're not entitled to the same space, and you're not entitled to be in the same space where you create a bigger problem for everyone, and then you have utter chaos, confusion, and possibly the loss of life.
And of course, this is a concern for Houstonians. We're in the most diverse city in the country, so obviously it's something we've been thinking about. But I wanted to ask you, have you spoken with the mayor of Charlottesville?
In fact, the mayor of Charlottesville, Mayor Signer, called me about 3 weeks ago, anticipating problems that occurred in his city. We talked about 3 weeks ago. He wanted my advice on how to handle that. The problem, as he acknowledged with Charlottesville, is everything is so close, in close proximity. That park where the protests had taken place, you're right on top of one another, so it's very difficult for the police to set up barricades to keep the groups apart. He was concerned about those conditions, that proximity, and wanted my advice. What I indicated to him, make sure you just have as much law enforcement as possible, try to keep people apart from one another, the groups apart as much as possible. But look, he and I have texted each other quite a bit, and I respect him, and we certainly are praying for people in Charlottesville. But as I indicated to him, hatred has no respect of boundaries. It's not limited to any one city. And we all have to be on top of it. We all have to draw red lines when it comes to hatred, with bigotry. You have to speak up very loudly. Leaders have to be very clear. You cannot be nuanced. You cannot give justification to the KKK or neo-Nazi groups or white supremacists. You have to be very, very clear and say these are not our values, that this is not acceptable, and we're not. And good people of goodwill can't be quiet, and you can't stand in the middle.
Mayor Turner telling us that, of course, Houston is a zero-tolerance zone when it comes to these kind of conflicts. Mayor Turner, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.